Welcome. My name is Renee Forsyth. I am the Director of Professional Development for Lyme Connect, and to provide a visual description, I am a white female with shoulder-length brown hair. I'm wearing a striped top today, and I'm sitting in front of a Lyme branded background. And we're thrilled that you're joining us today to learn more about how you can nurture and value employees with disabilities. And some of you may be new to Lyme Connect, so I just wanted to take a moment to share a little bit more about us. We are a not-for-profit organization, and our mission is to rebrand disability through achievement. We do that by attracting high-potential professionals and university students, including veterans, who have all different types of disabilities, into our network. Once an individual joins our network, we work with them to prepare them with the essential tools and confidence that help them achieve their goals. We also connect our network members with different scholarships, leadership programs, internships, and full-time careers with the world's leading corporations. All of you are corporate partners. We also, in turn, support our corporate partners, again, all of you, in recruiting, onboarding, developing, retaining, and promoting all employees who have disabilities. And together with our network members and our corporate partners, we celebrate the strengths and talents of people with disabilities. That's also the theme of this year's National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And it's a theme that we celebrate all the time at Lyme Connect. So again, we're excited to have you join us. If you're joining us as a person with a disability, we encourage you to join the Lyme Network. There's no fee to join the Lyme Network, and you can take advantage of all of our resources. But certainly, if you are joining us as a corporate partner, we invite you to join the corporate partner community in our platform. And I know my colleague has shared information about that, and we will also share that information in a follow-up email as well. So again, thank you for joining us today. And over the next few minutes, we'll talk about some of the common perceptions around disability. So as you're joining us, I encourage you to think about what your own awareness is around disability. And I applaud you for signing up for this session today. And we'll really walk through those. This isn't a place of judgment. It's a place where we're all looking to grow in our own awareness. So maybe you're joining us because you have a perception or a concern, and hopefully in the next few minutes we'll address some of those. Maybe you're thinking that you know if a member of your team or a colleague has a disability, or perhaps you're joining because you feel a little uncomfortable, or you might be concerned that you might offend someone with what you say or do when you're interacting with people with disabilities. Perhaps you're coming with the perception that individuals with disabilities know what they need and how to ask for it in the interview process or in the workplace. Or maybe you're wondering if a person with a disability will actually be able to do the work and be able to perform on your team. And we'll leave you with some things that you can do in addition to this webinar to support your employees with disabilities. So first off, just starting from the standpoint of thinking that you might know if a member of your team or a colleague has a disability. So let's talk about what disability even means. Disability, whether you're joining us from the US or Canada, the definition of disability, it's broadly defined as a physical or mental condition that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Based on this definition, we know that approximately 61 million US adults live with a disability and 8 million adults in Canada, equating to approximately 1 in 4 North Americans. And then just to go a little bit deeper into the statistics, we also know that approximately 1 in 5 students on university campuses has a disability. We're starting to see that number increase even more. We also did some research with the Center for Talent Innovation a few years ago, looking at the white-collar corporate workforce and how that workforce was impacted by disability. And the statistics that came out of that research was that almost 1 in 3, or 30%, of all white-collar corporate employees have a disability. So if you're looking around, looking at your team, looking at your colleagues and thinking, well, I don't have anybody around me who has a disability, that's likely not the case, but it may appear so because because almost 2/3 of all disabilities are non-visible or not apparent unless someone chooses to share that they have a disability with you. That can include learning and attention issues, medical conditions, mental health conditions, and more. So to further define what disability is, we can look at this spectrum of how an individual may be impacted by their disability. It may impact their ability to learn or the way that they learn. It may impact their attention. It may impact them intellectually. It may impact their memory. Mental health conditions are a broad umbrella for disability that also includes anxiety and depression. It may impact their ability to communicate. They might stutter, for example. It may impact them physically, which may be obvious if they use a wheelchair, if they're an amputee. But they also may live with a chronic health condition that impacts them physically that's not evident when you're meeting them. It may impact them in a sensory way. People, when they think of disability, often think of blind or deaf. That can also be a spectrum. People can be low vision or hard of hearing, or it may impact their ability to form social relationships. So this is a comprehensive definition. It may not completely include everything, but it gives you a sense of how broad the term disability is. And it's really when an individual meets with a disability, meets with a barrier in society that they're not able to fully and equally participate in whatever that situation is. So as a manager joining us, think about how you can start to remove some of these barriers for people on your team with disabilities. Think about the technology. Is it accessible for people with all different types of disabilities? Think about your physical space. How does that impact people with various disabilities? What is your policy around requesting accommodations, and how is that actually put into practice? And you may not know that now, but that might be something that you learn about after this session. What assumptions do you bring into the workplace? And we all live with assumptions. So again, we're not judging, but it's really about recognizing that those assumptions might come into play when you're making different decisions. What language and action do you use personally or is used by your team? And is that creating an inclusive culture for all people, including people with disabilities? So that provides a big picture view of disability, but we know that each person experiences their disability personally, and different factors come into play and impact their relationship with their disability. It could be variable. So if someone discloses that they have a disability and you know someone who has that same disability, they may experience it completely differently. And it also may impact them depending in different situations. It could be contextual. The situation or the environment may impact the way their disability affects them in different situations. And it also may impact their comfort in disclosing. So they may be comfortable talking about their disability to some people, but not other people. Cultural impacts, and I use that word broadly, impact an individual's relationship with their disability. It could impact their the support that they've received throughout their career. I mean, throughout their lives, and whether they got you know, care or treatment early on or diagnosis. We also see that family members have an impact on a person's relationship with their disability and whether they choose to disclose. So all of those things come into play. All of this to say that a person's relationship with their disability and how they navigate it is deeply personal, and it's important to understand that. So you might be joining thinking, you might be concerned that you might offend someone with what you say or do when interacting with people with disabilities. And I think that's an important thing to address in almost all of our sessions, because that is often a place where people feel uncomfortable. And language does matter. So we do try to address that and give you a basic understanding of language. And what we really say is that it depends on the person, and you really want to defer to their personal preference for how they prefer to be referred to. There's really two main avenues. People often either have person first language or identity first that they prefer. Person first language would be referencing someone as a person with a disability. It might just be one aspect of them, and they are many other things. Other people say, no, I am disabled. It's a core part of my identity, and it's not a bad word to say disabled. So you really just want to listen to whoever is living with that disability and what they prefer. There is language that you want to avoid, such as dated language, including handicapped or crippled are not terms that we use, or victimizing language, suggesting that someone is suffering from a disability when they may not see themselves as suffering or a victim at all. Special needs is also language that we don't use in a professional setting. So those are just some terms you really want to avoid. The other thing that can be really important as a manager is making sure that unintended offensive language is not being used on your team or in your workplace. So some examples of that are using a reference to a disability when you don't live with that disability. So if someone were to say, oh, I'm organized, I'm in really an organization mode because my OCD is acting up, or I thought I might have a panic attack. Any reference to disability when it's not something that that person really lives with can create a culture where people don't feel safe or comfortable disclosing their disability. And then, and finally, in this section, engaging with people with disabilities. First, you want to check your assumptions. If someone's especially living with a visible disability or an apparent disability, don't assume that they need your help. But you can ask if the person needs to be supported or needs any assistance, and they will let you know if they do or not. In whatever way you're capable of doing this, if you're in control of different events that you're hosting or meetings that you're hosting, make sure you're creating an accessible meeting, an accessible environment space, and using any accessibility tools, and really asking if anyone needs an accommodation in advance. If someone is working with either a support animal or a support person, make sure you're interacting with the individual and not that person. If someone's using an ASL interpreter, do not direct your conversation to the ASL interpreter. You would want to talk to the individual. And the same with if they're using a support dog, for example, that's a working animal and it's not a animal that you would want to play with or pet. But ultimately, you want to interact with with your employees with disabilities just as you would with any other employee. So you might think that individuals with disabilities already know what they need and when and how to ask for it. Well, when we talk about disclosure and disability, we really talk about it in terms of not every situation is we don't guide people and say every situation is a situation where you'd want to disclose. We really approach it in terms of whether disclosure is right for you and then when and how to do it to set yourself up for success. And I think as a manager, it's really important to understand that whether part of that decision, because many people come with different concerns about disclosing their disability. And these are some of the top concerns we hear from our network members on a regular basis. And these are actual quotes from people who have had these concerns around disclosure. First of all, the belief that people will judge me before they know me. This person said, I tell people only what is relevant to the situation. I try to tell them as little as possible because I know they'll think of me as different and potentially inept. Other people have fear of negative reactions or perceptions. We mentioned that earlier. Sometimes family members say, do not talk about your disability in the workplace. It's going to hold you back. Or maybe they have shared or disclosed in the past and it's been a negative experience for them. As this person said, always requesting accommodations and disclosing can be hard. It is like you're always explaining and answering questions and receiving either petty remarks or hero remarks about how you do what you do. This is a big one, concerns that it will impact my career. This person says, if I am one of two candidates that a company is considering and I disclose that I have a disability and need an accommodation to do the job, why would they choose to hire me? That could go the same for just being a team member or being an employee. Why would they choose to give me that new assignment or give me that promotion if they know I have a, excuse me, I have a disability or I need an accommodations? Or perhaps they don't know how to have the conversation and whether you live with a disability or not. Excuse me. I think you can relate to this quote. There aren't many opportunities in the workplace where a discussion of vulnerability takes place in a frank manner. And I think a lot of these are really relevant to managers, but certainly that last one, because we do know that statistics show that people disclose most frequently to their managers. So having that comfort, that trust, feeling like you're able to be vulnerable with your manager is something that's really important for people with disabilities in particular. So why might an employee choose to disclose? If they hadn't disclosed up until this point, why might they be choosing to do it right now? Perhaps their needs changed. People acquire disabilities later in life, or perhaps their symptoms are increasing and it's just a time when they need to disclose. Maybe they understand the role better. They have a little more comfort in their position. They know what they need to be successful. They may be thinking, if only I had this, I could be so much more productive. And an ideal situation is that they have an increased trust with you as their manager, and that's a really valuable position to be in. Because we do know that when people disclose, they see great success in disclosing often. As this person said, my conversation resulted in getting the technology I need. I'm able to do my job better and faster. As there's three images here, the person up in the upper right using a smart pen where he was able to record the meeting and then go back and take those notes so he could be fully present in the meeting. Another person wearing noise canceling headphones. Maybe she's in a big open environment and it's very distracting, and these noise canceling headphones really allow her to focus. And another person on his laptop using a screen reader. So those are some technology, but there's also the less tangible, but very, very important aspects of getting accommodations, or at least getting understanding from an individual's manager. As this person said, now my manager has explicitly given me a code word to use whenever I'm having a bad day. This image may be someone who has a migraine or a chronic health condition, and she doesn't have to go and disclose to her manager every time or go into great detail. It's just understood. I might need a little bit more support today because I'm experiencing something related to my disability. And I love this last one. When I needed a flexible schedule for physical therapy, mental health therapy, whatever it might be, I experienced empathy and understanding, which helped me reframe my view, realizing that everyone has their own needs in the workplace. And that can be really valuable for people to take away the stigma and to understand that it's okay to ask for what you need that will help you be your best at work. So these are some of the different touch points when we talk about whether, when, and how. The when can happen at many different touch points. It can happen as early as when people are looking to apply to your company to determine, is this a company that looks like it would support people with disabilities? As a manager, you're likely involved in the interview process. So just to understand that, how it might factor in before the person's even an employee, it could happen prior to the interview. Once they learn a little bit more about the interview structure, they may request an accommodation. It might come up during the interview, either because they're choosing to share a strength that they have as a result of living with their disability, or maybe they want to understand if you're a manager who would be supportive of people with disabilities. Sometimes it happens prior to someone starting to get that accommodation in place, but it can really happen at any point once someone is employed for some of the reasons we just mentioned. What I have on here is that some people choose never to disclose, and that can be completely fine. If that person doesn't need an accommodation. But in some cases, it might just be because they fear what might happen if they do choose to disclose. And that's not an ideal situation. Okay, so let's talk about the concern that maybe a person might not be able to do the work. And this is where we really need to talk about assumptions and how they come into play. And I love this image because, as it says, limiting beliefs do not equal facts. So just because you or I may look at someone with a certain disability and can't imagine how they could do a certain job or different tasks does not make it true. And I think that's where we all need to just kind of take a step back and look at any assumptions we may bring into the workplace or to the recruiting process. As one of our network members said, sometimes with disabilities, the bar is set very low. Even just going to college can be seen as this great success, but that doesn't set a path for reaching a really high level of potential. And one of the things that we know and we witness every day is that our Lyme network members have incredible potential, and they bring these really unique strengths and skills to every situation, but certainly to the workplace. So when we survey our network members and we ask them, how has your disability impacted you? We did this a couple of years ago, and they came back with all of these amazing examples and stories of how it impacted them. And they came back with great examples of these strengths that they developed as a result of living with their disability. Some people talked about being an amazing problem solver because they always had to navigate a world that's not accessible for them. Other people talked about being a strategic thinker because that's the way their brain worked related to their disability. Other people have taken on leadership roles either on campus, advocating for the rights of people with disabilities in the workplace, developing a disability ERG, or just personally in advocating for their own medical needs. We heard other people talk about being incredibly organized because they were never sure when their symptoms might flare up. So they always were prepared and delivered ahead of time. And then resilience and determination are words that we heard over and over again. And I think those are incredible strengths that would be valuable to any team. Um, we also heard stories about specialized skills that people developed, and they related them directly to their disability. Some people are able to see patterns that they realize their peers aren't able to see, and they relate it to their neurodiversity. Other people created systems that made, because of the way their disability impacted them, and it made their company that much more efficient. People who maybe learned differently expressed how they had a unique curiosity that allowed them to ask questions that got to better results for their entire team. Other people talked about being blind, and he's an attorney, and he really honed his listening skills, and he could always tell when the other individual was wavering in mediation, and it made him really good at his job as an attorney. Being a manager and having a disability sometimes allowed people to have a really unique empathy and understand that people have various needs on their team, and they were able to get the most out of their team. One of the amazing things I think that we see all the time is the way people with disabilities use technology and understand how to get the most out of the accessibility features and what the needs are of people with different disabilities in technology and just generally in different businesses and services. And so they bring that unique view to any workplace. These are just some examples. It's not to say that every person living with a disability has these strengths or these skills, but as a manager, it's making the space and recognizing that each individual does bring these unique, their own unique strengths and skills to the workplace. And all of these are really critical in building business, which of course, as a manager is going to be really important to you and to the performance of your team. Statistics shows or research shows that if you have a member of your target audience on your team, the entire team is 144% more likely to understand that target audience. And that's really important because this is a big market with incredible buying power. Globally, the buying power of people with disabilities and their friends and family equals almost $13 trillion, and disability touches 73% of consumers. So it's important to understand that market, and people with disabilities have a unique perspective on that. So getting to the last section, I think, what can I do to support my employees with disabilities? So let's start with if someone discloses to you, if your employee discloses to you, what do you do? First of all, recognize that that decision to disclose is really personal. You know, we talked about the whether, when, and how, and just receive that information as one individual with empathy to another. And you can say something like, "Thank you for sharing this with me. Can you help me understand if there's an accommodation that will help you in your position or help you to do your job better?" And then know what to do with the information. So again, it gets back to what are your internal policies and practices, and finding out how you can support that person. So you can say something like, "I'm going to contact the appropriate people to identify next steps and discuss what options we have for supporting you." So you're not promising anything, but you're receiving the information and you're letting the person know that you're going to go on this journey with them and make sure that you put them on the right path. So once that happens, I'm not going to get too much into the weeds right now, but you'll want to get engaged in the process with the appropriate people internally. Maybe you have an accommodations team. If you don't know who it is, start with your HR business partner, take notes on what happened in that meeting, and then get the support you need internally. That will probably involve a conversation, and then it will be determined what the accommodation might be. So then back to you as a manager, you'd want to implement the accommodation. It might be a flexible schedule or technology or an assigned desk. Maybe it's structured breaks, working remotely. Those are all things that will be determined internally with your team. And then what can be really tricky for a manager is how to manage the perception for the rest of the team, right? If people think, well, they're getting something unfairly. What's really critical in this trust is that you don't share information inappropriately. So confidentiality is key. And you can just share, if you need to address it with the team, you can just share a comment such as, "We treat each employee individually, and there are different considerations on which we make business decisions while always maintaining employee privacy." So it's not something you'd want to share with the team. That's not appropriate, and confidentiality is key. Then as a manager, you just want to stay in touch with this person and check in to ensure the accommodations are working for both parties. The other things that you can do is raise awareness around disability. Share what you learned with your team. Hopefully you have some takeaways from this webinar. You can go back and share that you attended the webinar. You'll want to talk about accessibility, even just bringing up the idea of accessibility. What features do we have? What can we use in our Teams meetings that make it easier for people? That opens the door to people understanding that you're tuned into disability and accessibility. Support the efforts of your disability ERG. If you're not disabled yourself or you don't have someone you can attend as an ally, get involved with the Lyme partnership. We have liaisons at all of your companies. So if you want to get involved, we can make sure you make that connection. Encourage positive disability-related language and actions. If you hear something that's not appropriate, even if it's just joking or unintended, make sure you address it. That will all help you build a culture of trust. And then ask and advocate for all employees. So ask all your employees what they need to be successful in their positions. Just as a manager, that can really open a door to someone who might want to ask for an accommodation. If there are standard accommodations that are available to everyone, whether it's a standing desk or some kind of different technology, educate yourself and inform your team about those. If someone does disclose, make sure you stay part of these accommodations, the accommodation discussions. So you want to not just send them off to the accommodations team, make sure it's moving along and that they know you're on their side. And so ultimately you'll be one of their advocates in making sure that they get something that works for you and for the team. Finally, once the accommodation is determined, you want to provide it. And if you're there thinking, well, this is going to be so costly to my team, I just want to share some stats with you that 59% of accommodations cost nothing, and most accommodations cost less than $500. So generally, granting accommodations are not costly to your bottom line or to the company. There's a lot of things you can do just using the technology that's already available, and use them in interviews, meetings, events. There's a lot of accessibility tools in our technology that really make a difference for people. Live captions, meeting summaries, those are some great examples. And then continue to grow in your own understanding of disability and accessibility. We're always doing webinars, even next Tuesday, I believe it is, we're having a webinar focused on ADHD. So you can come and hear from experiences of people who live with ADHD. I hope I'm right about that date. It's Tuesday or Wednesday. Additional resources. Your HR and recruiting team internally, you have disability ERGs that are a really valuable resource to learn more about disability. And ultimately, your employees often know what they need. They just don't know how it translates into the workplace always. So have those conversations with them. Again, we encourage you to join our community platform. We have this recording and many, many other resources on there, and you can access all of those once you join with your corporate partner email address to get approval. AskJan.org is a US government site that has an A to Z of all different disabilities. So if you want to learn more, you can check that out. If someone came to you and shared a specific disability and you want to learn more for yourself, that might be a good place to start. So again, if you're joining us and you're a person with a disability, we do encourage you to join the Lyme Network. That can be with your personal email address, but we also encourage you to join as a corporate partner to gain all the corporate partner resources. Last slide. I'm Renee Forsyth. If you would like to reach out to me, if you're joining us from the US, Jennifer Grauso is your liaison with your company. And if you're joining us from Canada, it's Karen Kelsey. So if you'd like to get more involved with the partnership, you can reach out to any of us. And with that, I will stop sharing and see if there are any questions. Okay. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A feature or in the chat. Oh, thank you. My colleague put that information in there for our event next Tuesday. Okay. I don't see any questions. Thank you for joining us. We will follow up with a link to how you can access this recording, and we appreciate that you took the time to be with us today. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you.